In this episode, Golden and I discuss Star Trek Discovery Season 2. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 39. I'm your host, Orren Merton. So Star Trek Discovery Season 2 just wrapped up last week, and Golden and I sat down to talk about it. We give our thoughts and our overview on the entire season, so even though we try not to spoil everything, there's definitely going to be spoilers about the season arc and about various character events and things like that. So if you've already seen the season, you're good to go. If you haven't seen the whole season and you don't want anything spoiled, you don't want to learn anything that you haven't already in the episodes you've seen, then go ahead and finish up the season. You can binge watch every episode at CBS All Access in the USA, Space in Canada, or Netflix the rest of the world. And once you've watched it all, come on back and enjoy our discussion. All right, so let's get to it. I am here with Golden to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, which just finished last week.
Well, I'm gonna step back anyway, because I didn't know you when Star Trek Discovery first started.
Right.
And I never got a chance to even see the first episode. And then found out, okay, it's on CBS All Access. I don't have that. And then I met you and you said, no, it's good. And I watched season 1 and it was not good. It was excellent.
It was.
Visually, the acting, just everything was just really incredibly well done.
Yeah.
That I was really impressed. So I was actually very much looking forward to season 2, and by no means was I disappointed.
Absolutely. It surpassed my expectations. And I had high expectations because, like you said, season 1 was quite good. I think season 1 was trying to get its feet. A lot of, I think, series do that. Their first season is when everybody's trying to figure out their role.
I don't even think it needed to get its feet. I think it was already... It jumped into the deep end and kept going.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons also that you and I both liked it, and I should probably put this out there for people who are true Trekkers, because they would get upset with me saying Trekkie. This series is set 10 years before Star Trek, the original series, and some people were getting kind of bent out of shape about canon because they've put so much of their own time and energy and effort into sort of learning canon that when something comes along and
it doesn't seem to be in that canon.
Yeah. And, when people add things to the canon that kind of stick out like sore thumbs, for example, the USS Discovery has technology that no other ship in the entire fleet did, and yet it's even earlier than the Enterprise, which was supposed to be the flagship. Or Spock having a sister, when in fact we've seen Spock in TV series and movies, and he's never mentioned a sister.
And just, it hasn't been said yet, there will be spoilers. So if you have not seen season 2, wait to listen to the podcast. We can only say this. It is definitely worth it. If you want something that is like watching a movie every single time you sit down to watch the next episode, because it is visually stunning, well put together, incredibly well thought out. And before you start season 2, make sure that you see the small treks or the short treks.
The short treks.
Short treks.
Yeah.
The short treks, because those actually were woven into the season very nicely.
Everyone except the Harry Mudd one tied in.
There could be something along the way that ends up
with the Harry Mudd one. Yeah,
maybe
could be.
So and then you also touched on, people upset with it might not be exactly canon and all of that, which by the end of season 2, it is explained how it could be. And I really just appreciated not being, and I don't know the original Trek series as well as you.
Right.
I really did appreciate that from what I do know of the series,
Mm-hmm.
especially those episodes that they would show on TV all the time.
Right.
Regarding Pike, how well they redid it.
I have to say, since you brought up Pike, one of the things I loved about season 2 is, for those of us who do know the original series, Pike was kind of a footnote. He wasn't really more than that. He was the guy who was in the pilot that never aired. And then he was the guy in the menagerie who's, wounded and, beyond recognition and goes to the planet Talos 4, or was it 6? Speaking of my limited knowledge, he's the one who goes to the planet to be in, their mind, and that's it. And then for those people who are into the reboot, then you got to see the Bruce Greenwood Pike, which was a completely different character, kind of a mentor to Kirk, which he never was in the original series. And that was his own thing. And that was good, but it didn't have much to do. I'm being shown 4 fingers. So it's Talos 4. I was right the first time. So Pike was mentioned. He was a part of history, but he wasn't really fleshed out. And having Anson Mount do such a wonderful job this season playing Captain Pike, he really fleshed out that character. He made him come to life. He was so good and so sympathetic and such a important character this season that the fans have called for a Captain Pike spin-off show, which I think is a great idea.
It's interesting to me that one of the things that really struck me at the end, and I've been trying to do as few spoilers as possible thus far for those of you that are trying not to get anything before you watch it. The character of Christopher Pike, by the end of this season, you just have so much respect. He knows, he has seen the future, and he has seen himself in that chair, and he knows that something just catastrophic is going to happen to him and his life will be ruined. He doesn't know that there is a silver lining to that cloud.
Right.
He doesn't know that Talos 4 awaits.
Right.
And yet he goes head on and he accepts his fate and he accepts whatever it is that is coming toward him, because that is what you do as a Starfleet officer.
I agree. And I think one of the best things that shows sort of that weave their way in between canon, I think one of the best things they can do is flesh out people and relationships and things that aren't previously explored. And I think this season did a great job of that with Pike. We've just talked about how, it really makes him into a character you care about. Also, Spock is part of this season. Ethan Peck does an amazing job as Spock, just a wonderful Spock. But moreover, one of the things that is in the original series is that Spock in the menagerie risks his entire career to bring Pike to Talos 4. And so the question is, okay, we know that Pike was his previous captain, but since we don't know the relationship between Pike and Spock, you wonder, why is he willing to risk all this for this guy?
You do know that relationship now.
And now, exactly, now we know. Now we say, okay, they have the kind of relationship, and Pike is the kind of commander that if you knew there was this option for him, you would risk everything, because he has risked everything for you.
He doesn't really know these people. But as soon as he joins Discovery, he is part of their crew, and they treat him as a valuable member of their crew.
They treat him as family.
They do.
And they say that a lot. You know, one of the things that I write in my own stories and the stories I love the most, I mean, you look at the Avengers or Justice League or whatever, I mean, all of these things is found family. Stories about found family really move me. It's one of the reasons I love Shazam so much.
And I think that one of the things that will come back with Tilly is her found family.
Yeah.
That she's missing that other half now that was part of her.
Right.
And talking about relationships, here is someone that so easily can build relationships and friendships with the most unlikely of people or beings or creatures.
Right.
Because when else are you going to have a queen greet you by your first name and jump up in joy and,
right.
oh my gosh, ice cream and coffee or whatever. I think it was ice cream.
Yeah, ice cream.
Did she want coffee
it was ice
too?
Cream. I don't remember the coffee, but I do remember the ice cream. Yeah, I mean, all the characters are incredibly well fleshed out.
And the queen, it's like, she didn't leave.
Right.
She's like, oh, but no, I mean, this is, my being here is protecting my people.
Right.
This is where I need to be.
Exactly. So we started talking about the actors. I mean, all of them, you know, they say that a lot of, I don't remember what director said it, or one director said, like, you know, 90% of direction is casting or whatever. And I think that the casting here was amazing. Everyone that watches this show falls in love with Sonequa Martin Green as Michael Burnham. She's amazing. She's a great actress. She has an amazing depth of emotion. And considering she's playing a human character who's trying to get back in touch with her emotions, she does it so well. I mean, she's able to play both emotional depth and emotional naivety at the same time.
Well, there's this relationship that she has with Ash Tyler that you know that she wants it, but yet he's turned on her once before, and can she trust him? And she in her heart wants to trust him, and she trusts him implicitly.
Yeah.
But the logic part of her is trying to tell her, don't do it.
Right. You know, and just obviously Michelle Yeoh has been an actor forever and a day, and she's just fantastic in everything she's in, and she does such a wonderful job as, you know, basically this mercenary character, and yet she loves Michael Burnham, and she's willing to do things to protect her, that someone
but she's trying to still hide that she's doing it.
Right. But, you know, I thought it was wonderful when her mother basically just called her out.
Michael Burnham's mother.
Right. Michael Burnham's mother just called her out and said, look.
Spoiler!
And said, look, I know you love her. You know.
So if you'd like to know where Michael Burnham's mother has been all this time, watch season 2.
Yeah, it's very well put together. I could name every single actor and actress here. I love them all. You know, Doug Jones is amazing. Anthony Rapp is amazing. Mary Weissman is amazing. Shazad Latif is amazing. You know, Winston Cruz is amazing. I mean, they're all amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't any one of the cast that falls short.
There's no weak link. And this is a cast that, you know, they've become like a family. It's sort of funny. I didn't write down the names of the actresses to talk about, but I did think this was interesting, that the actress who originally played Ariam in season 1 was not the actress who played Ariam in season 2. The season 2 Ariam was a new actress, and the actress who played Ariam was the lieutenant, the blonde-haired lieutenant who replaced Ariam and is now part of the new crew. So they swapped the parts so that actress could stay on the show. I like how they did that. And the actress they got to play Ariam for a few, which for those of you who don't yet know the show, this character Ariam is a very, very cybernetically enhanced human who, you know, resembles Nebula more than anything else. And so it's easy to slip someone else in that makeup.
And it was really interesting, the episode that focused kind of on her, that also then focused on one of the other helmsmen, who was injured and has this cybernetic implant, and how she was feeling less than human, but then seeing what Ariam is going through really helped her to come to terms with really embracing this enhancement that she has.
Yeah. So many things are well thought through. I wanted to talk about, I thought that sort of the theme of season 2 was really interesting, because the idea of science versus faith as a science fiction theme has been around forever, literally since science fiction first was written, probably in the 1900s. That was the topic. It was faith versus science. And in a way, this goes into that as well, because especially at the beginning of the series, there's all these 7 red lights, and there's talk about, is this God, is this angelic? But it quickly becomes apparent that faith was a metaphor here, not just for religion, but it was a metaphor for faith in yourself, for faith in your abilities, for faith in your teammates.
Yes.
And they played that really, really well. And in the end, one of the things that Star Trek has done, and has done incredibly badly, for those of us who remember the movie Star Trek V, kids, if you haven't seen it, don't bother. That's the one William Shatner did. But in Star Trek V, they literally go across the galaxy to find God.
So it goes directly from 4 to 6.
Exactly, 4 to 6. That's 2 fantastic movies. It was very on the nose, very "Are you God?" And ultimately, in the end, it ditched it, because it was like, no, you're not God. The entire movie had one great line in it, and that was, what does God need with a starship? I think that
entertainment.
Yeah, seriously. I think that this season ditched that whole God in the Star Trek universe very well by making, I'm assuming the majority of you listening to this are in some part of season 2. And so I'm trying not to give a ton of spoilers, just like Golden isn't. But I think they do a really good job of resolving it, so that it's not just, we ditched the issue of trying to show God in our Star Trek universe. They took faith and gave it a payoff, that those who had faith, it pays off, but not in a religious way.
And before you do watch season 2, going back and watching the Menagerie episodes, definitely worth it to kind of just refresh your memory on what happened, and also to really appreciate how much they embraced the prior series in just updating it. Speaking of updates, I remember sitting next to you when you first saw the Enterprise.
The USS Enterprise.
The U.S. Enterprise bridge.
I
seriously, I thought you were going to jump out of your skin, and maybe we have to pause this and give you 5 minutes just to calm back down.
They did everything that I could possibly have wanted with the USS Enterprise, because the Kelvinverse movies, the J.J. Abrams movies, they have their own bridge. People like to joke that it looks like an Apple store, and it kind of does. It's very white. It's kind of this immaculate thing, but it's its own complete thing. This series takes place in prime continuity. They were going to bring the USS Enterprise into it. So the question is, what do you do with a bridge? Because USS Discovery obviously looks very different than the old Enterprise, but they can't show you the old Enterprise, because there's no way in 2019 with CGI and modern effects and, millions of dollars per episode budget, there's no way they could get by with this sort of cardboard button and dial.
But it's
interface.
Updated so that it still looks like the original Enterprise bridge.
Exactly.
It just looks a little bit more technical for 2019.
It's amazing.
As well as the outfits.
It's exactly. The outfits look fantastic. The bridge, it looked metallic. It looked colorful. It looked welcoming. It was the same shape. Every desk was in the same spot. They just had, sort of CG overlay It was even the red alert symbol was the same.
The USS Enterprise cast has that demeanor
Yes.
of the original series.
Yes. Yes. And of course, like the
Especially
original...
the first officer.
Yeah, number one. And of course, you know, like the original Enterprise, they apparently could not afford seatbelts. So...
And you were also saying something about there at one point you were saying there are 3 number 1s on this bridge, or 4, or how many?
Right, because in the Cage, the original pilot from which the clips were taken for Menagerie, Majel Barrett played number 1. And Spock was the
who is to be Majel Roddenberry, right?
Right, who was the one who became Nurse Chapel and married Jean. So she is the first officer. She's number 1. And yet, Spock, as science officer, as lieutenant, is also a commander rank. And Saru, Doug Jones's character, is also of commander rank. And Michael Burnham, as science officer, is also of commander rank. So all of these commanders ended up on the bridge of the Enterprise. I mean, and then, of course, ultimately you had an admiral as well. So this was like, I mean, just so many high-level executive officers on this one bridge. It was pretty funny. But it was a glorious set. I mean, the turbo lift looked the same. It was glorious. And for those of you who love the original series, and I was expecting to go to Twitter and find all the hardcore fans of the original series who were watching Discovery to just be poo-pooing all over the bridge and talk, oh, I can't believe they put neon lights in it. It is euphoria around the board. Everyone seems to have had the reaction I did, to the point that when I was listening to Shuttle Pod, which is a Star Trek only podcast I listened to, and they were talking about the bridge of the USS Enterprise, the woman, Kayla, who was the host of the show, along with her co-host, she was saying she couldn't believe how positive it was, and she liked it, but she wasn't that excited by it. But then I think she's younger than me, and I think Next Gen was her thing more than the original series.
So I'm going to move us back to Discovery.
Let's go back to Discovery.
And the fact that you have characters, torn apart, separated, which was happening with Michael Burnham and her brother Spock, and where's Spock, and she needs to find him. But then you have this other relationship that was torn apart in the first season. The Doctor.
Right.
And Stamets.
Spoilers.
Yu is back.
Yes.
And Stamets could not be happier. He is rejoicing. He cannot believe how lucky he is and how he gets to have you back in his life. But Yu doesn't know how he feels and is in such conflict because he doesn't even know who he is.
Right.
And he's expected to step right back in where he left off. And to see you go through all of that. And it was kind of nice that he wasn't just, oh yeah, okay, I'm back, everything goes back to normal.
Right.
It was nice to see them develop it out and for him to find himself again.
Right. Everybody gets an arc.
And maybe what he needs to do is go to the USS Enterprise. Maybe he needs to go do this. Maybe he needs to go do that.
Right.
And in the end, he finds where he really, truly feels he needs to be.
Absolutely. Everybody gets an arc, and all of their arcs are beautiful. Saru changes into, one hell of a Kelpian. Spock, when we see him, he's an absolute mess. He's been sort of destroyed by getting the time mind dump, and he has to be put back together over the course of a season. Pike everybody gets an arc, and I think the writers really did a good job. Even when some people talk about, this plot hole or that plot hole, or what they say in the Star Trek world is, this is one of the Star Trek writers talked about, Ron Moore, who's now the showrunner for Outlander. He talked about in the day that their scripts used to just have holes in them because the writers weren't science people. And so whenever it was time for something to happen, they would just write tech the tech. So they would just write, Captain, we can tech the tech, and that will solve the problem. And so he was saying it as a joke because, it became just lazy writing, that they would just always tech the tech. And so there were complaints that, sometimes they would tech the tech. In season 1, they introduced this thing called time crystals that do whatever you need them to do in that particular show. And, there is some of that. There's some teching of the tech. But the writers did such a wonderful job on the human drama that I am willing to forgive any teching of the tech.
And technically,
Mm-hmm.
the opening sequence, like the first season, is just beautiful to watch.
Absolutely.
It is like intricate lace.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this antique, intricate lace.
Yeah.
That it has this old quality to it, even though you know that the technology is so advanced.
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful opening sequence. I mean, this is a show where truly they put all the money on the screen. I mean, I remember at least in season 1 that each episode had a budget of like $8 million, and it was the most expensive show on television. Though ironically, it's a 2-part finale. It really is a movie at that point.
Well, you had said that the person directing it was only directing 1 episode, and then they came to him and said, you know what, there's a little bit more here than 1 episode can hold, so
we're making it 2. Yeah. It's like, congratulations, you're now directing a feature film for only $16 million, when, normally these, sci-fi movies have budgets at least $40 million or more.
The technology and the CG and everything does not take you out of it.
Exactly. You never forget the human drama, and that's amazing. Speaking of that opening sequence, that's a good segue to the fact that this series happens to be scored by one of my favorite composers, Jeff Russo. He scores a lot of other things. He scores Legion and I think Fargo and a bunch of series, and he does such a good job of creating music that harkens back to Star Trek.
Well, yeah,
music of old.
There is the old Star Trek music threaded in very nicely throughout. The only thing with season 2 that, kind of got to me at times, and I don't know if this was a direction thing or what the direction was for it, but Sonequa Martin Green, sometimes the narration that she does just, to me, feels a little dry. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's, well, this is how the character would do it, so this is how I'm going to do this, right, or what's behind that.
Yeah. I mean, there's always little things to criticize,
and it is a little thing.
Yeah. One of my little, I wouldn't even say it's something I'm sad about because I'm interested in seeing where it goes, but they found an interesting way to not have to worry about canon anymore, and that is that the season 3 is going to be set in the future. And that's interesting to see who they come, who they face and what their challenges are and all of that. Certainly there's a lot of storytelling potential there. And that's why they did it. I mean, they did it because they don't want to be hemmed in by canon anymore. And they want to do their own thing. But one of the things that kind of, I don't want to say bothers me, but that I'm a little bit sad about is I really enjoyed USS Discovery's crew interacting with the rest of Starfleet. And I thought they had a great relationship with the rest of the Star Trek universe, which is now gone. Now it's just them out there. So it'll be interesting to see how they thread that needle. Plus, again, from a business point of view, they are working on a Section 31 spin-off show that is supposed to start filming after season 3. It's, I believe, to start filming in 2020, assuming, it's pre-production and all the rest and goes off as thing. And the star of that show is supposed to be Michelle Yeoh, who currently is off in the future with the rest of Discovery. So we're going to have to see how that goes. I don't know what that'll mean. It's science fiction. They can do whatever
they going
want.
to be able to get the spore drive working in the future?
Maybe. Who knows?
Will Tilly reconnect with her spore friend?
Maybe. There's so many possibilities for the future. It is truly wide
Michael
open.
Burnham be reunited with her mother?
I'm gonna put that one down now. My prediction is yes. That's my prediction. Is yes, she will be reunited with her mother.
Will she find letters and notices from Spock that he left for her to discover in the future?
I don't think so, but you never know.
I like how they dealt with Ash Tyler's baby. I'll leave it at that. I think that the characters that we were introduced to, just those, to the little characters,
right?
Those little side characters that we thought were side characters that then came back later,
right?
Was a really neat way to deal with it.
Right. That reminds me, Mary Chieffo, who played L'Rell, the Chancellor of the Klingon Empire. She's a full-on Trekkie, and I know that she's been so excited to be part of this show. Her goodbye was so deeply heartfelt.
Well, you didn't mention the goodbyes.
Oh, yeah.
So several of the cast that may not be present in season 3 wrote goodbyes. Is that correct?
Yeah, they wrote goodbyes on Twitter, sometimes taking up a post or two. In the case of the actress named Jane Brooke, who played Admiral Cornwall, she wrote a full little paragraph that she then photographed and tweeted out because she had more to say than would fit in a tweet or two. But they were just incredibly graceful, incredibly moved and glad to be part of the Trek universe. And you could just tell there was just a lot of love for the show, for the fan base, for just the entire experience of being part of Star Trek. And as a fan, it's always rewarding when the people who become part of the story are as excited as you are.
And maybe we will see them.
Yeah.
If they do take Anson Mount as Captain Christopher Pike on a couple short treks or something like that. It could be that he runs into some of those people again.
It could be that they do give him a spin-off show. We'll see. So, yeah, Star Trek Discovery. If you haven't been watching it, you're probably not listening to this episode. But if you haven't been watching it and you are listening to this episode for some reason, then thank you, first of all. We love listeners.
And even with as many spoilers as we've given you, it is still, I don't think, going to take away your enjoyment of the show.
Right. We haven't told you anything that's going to make any single episode not as exciting for you. And
at the very end, someone snaps their fingers and everyone turns to dust. I mean,
that's right.
Sorry. Wrong universe.
I really liked season 2 up until the point Thanos came in. That's when it just all started going to hell. Yeah. But yeah, if you haven't been watching Discovery at all, you really should. If this is a great Trek series.
Imagine if they had some captain that showed up in, Captain Marvel of one of the other ships.
I haven't read
that would have been very entertaining.
Yeah, I haven't read any, but I know that there's fanfic, Star Trek and Doctor Who. But yeah, if you have been watching it and you're listening to this after watching season 2, I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And if you, of course, have any opinions about it, you can always drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. We'd love to chat. If you've watched season 1 and you're on the fence about season 2, then
get off the fence.
Yeah, get off the fence. You will like this. If you liked season 1, you will like season 2 even more. If you didn't like season 1, then you probably
will still like season 2 even more.
Right. Then if you really enjoy, basically on a scale of 1 to 10, your enjoyment of season 2 is probably going to be 3 or 4 points higher. So if you're already at 10, that shows you how much you're going to really fantastically love this series. And if you didn't really like it, it's still going to be pushed into the positive side.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I look forward to the next season, and I'm glad that I got hooked on it.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I'm really tempted to go back and start watching from season 1 if there weren't so many other things to start watching.
I know. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/39. If you liked this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions for panels and things like that, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and I'll catch you next time.